Hi, thank you for joining me, Mindy Mandell here. And this video today is on the seventh hypothesis of Plato's Parmenides. For those of you new to the channel, this video is actually part of a series of videos on Plato's Parmenides. Videos on hypotheses 1 through 6 can be found on my channel page. Now, I divide the hypotheses into 9. There are some other ways of dividing it up. There's some disagreement there. But the way I see it divided up is Parmenides is talking about the one, and then he's using the basic structure, the formal structure of dialectic, to make his case. Now, the first hypothesis is actually outside of that structure. It is beyond both what is and is not. But then hypotheses 2 through 9 will fit that formal structure. And so in past videos, I talked about if the one is. And basically, for those of you new to dialectic, you pick a topic that you want to explore. In this case, it's the one, but you can talk about beauty or justice or anything. If beauty is, if justice is, and so on. And then you have 4 questions that would follow. In this case, we're looking at the one, in the case of the dialogue Parmenides. So you ask if the one is, and then there are 4 questions that would follow. And in past videos, I matched up each of those questions to one of the different hypotheses, 2 through 5. And then when we went on to the 6th hypothesis, then we started to look at if the one is not. And we saw that it's the same basic 4 questions. And these would match up to hypotheses 6 through 9. In my last video on the 6th hypothesis, then we saw what would follow for the one in and of itself. If the one is not, what could you possibly say about the one? Could you say anything at all? And so that was the topic of the 6th. And we saw that the 6th had a certain symmetry to the 2nd, because they both deal with that first question. But the 2nd deals with it in the hypothetical case if the one is, whereas the 6th dealt with it in the hypothetical case if the one is not. We're going to see a similar symmetry here in the 7th. The 7th is the second question here. What would follow for the one in relation to the others? And that has a symmetry to the 3rd hypothesis, which looks at the same thing, but if the one is. And we're going to see the symmetry run throughout with 8 and 9 as well. And so now what I want to look at is that symmetry between the 7th and the 3rd. Now, to see that more clearly, I'm going to just highlight a few of the main points that I talked about in my video on the 3rd hypothesis. I will give you a link to the 3rd hypothesis so that you can see, or my video on it rather, so that you can see more fully what I discussed there. But some of the basic points, the key points that we pulled out of the 3rd is that the 3rd introduced the Greek word ousia. It's often translated as essence or existence, but neither of these English words really capture what ousia is. When we talk about realms of reality, we talk about them having being, but also a certain vitality and an intellectual quality. And ousia is putting the 3 together. It's that quality to revert intellectually on itself, to fully know itself, and it gives the vitality and the fullness of what it is, and that is ousia. And we saw that the 3rd hypothesis 1 would sometimes gain ousia and sometimes lose it. It would go in and out, so it goes into being and it perishes. And in discussing this relationship then between the 1 or the 3rd hypothesis 1 and the realms in the physical world, what is that interplay, if you will, between our realm of time and space and what is beyond it, whether you think of it as spiritual or divine. At this point, we don't have to define it, but what is beyond time and space. And to discuss that, I use the example of film. When you're old style film was 24 frames per second, and it seems as though there is motion in the movie. You see, it seems as if people truly are moving. But when you roll the film out, you see that you can't actually see any motion. You can tell that there must have been motion Like, for example, if you follow this person, you can see him getting higher up on the film. So this seems like there is motion. He is walking down the street, yet we don't actually see the motion. And this is a common analogy to describe our physical world, where it certainly looks like we're moving. Here I am, my mouth is moving, you're hearing sound. It seems like sound waves are moving. But yet, what is being suggested here is that this is very much like the allegory of the cave, where prisoners are looking at shadows dancing on a wall and they think the shadows really are moving, but they're not. This is really just, they're just shadows, and this is just a reflection. The physical world is a passive receiver of psychical and natural reason principles. There's no true motion, no true life, if you will. Like on the wall of the cave, there's no true life there. Those are just shadows. And so something like that is being described here, was being described, in the third hypothesis. And it's that interplay, whatever action may be taking place, whatever motion, whatever vitality, whatever wherever intellect is, it's in that space between the frames. And the translator that we used before, I think it was Thomas Taylor I used for my video on the third, called it the sudden. It's sometimes called the instant or the gap, or there are various names, but it's outside of time and space. And so all these terms, in a way, are, they're just metaphorical. We have to understand they're outside of time and space. And so the third hypothesis gave us that interaction between our realm of time and space and what is beyond it. The seventh hypothesis, though, is a denial of the third. So let's see how Parmenides sets this up. And all of the translations I'm going to use here are from Harold North Fowler. So the seventh hypothesis begins at 163b with this statement: "Let us now go back again to the beginning and see whether the conclusions we reach will be the same as at present or different. We ask then, if the one is not, what will be the consequences in regard to it?" Okay, so again, with the six, we were looking at if the one is, what is true of it in and of itself. But now we're looking at its consequences, its relationship to others. And he asks, does the expression "is not" denote anything else than the absence of existence in that of which we say that it is not? His interlocutor Aristoteles replies, no, nothing else. And when we say that a thing is not, do we mean that it is in a way and is not in a way? Or does the expression "is not" mean without any qualifications that the non-existent is not in any way, shape, or manner, and does not participate in being in any way? Aristoteles replies, without any qualifications whatsoever. So there's a distinction between the sixth and the seventh hypotheses. So then, Parmenides, just to make it clear, he says the non-existent cannot be and cannot in any other way partake of ousia. So there's the idea of ousia, that intellectual turning to know itself that was so prevalent in the third hypothesis. In the seventh, there cannot be any participation with ousia. Remember, the third had it going in and out, coming into being and perishing. That's not the case with the seventh. It is denied in the seventh. We're coming into being and perishing anything else than receiving and losing existence. So again, that was the language used in the third hypothesis. That which has no participation in ousia can neither receive it nor lose it. So then the one, since it does not exist in any way, it cannot possess or lose or share in existence at all. So then the non-existent one neither perishes nor comes into being, since it participates in no way in existence, and existence throughout the section is ousia. So then it is not changed in nature at all, for such change involves coming into being and perishing. And now we're going to see some of the consequences of the seventh hypothesis, one that denies the activity of the third. If it is not changed, it cannot move, can it? And we cannot say that that which is nowhere is at rest, for that which is at rest must always be in some place, which is the same. So it's neither in motion nor at rest. Thus, we shall say again that the non-existent one is neither at rest nor in motion. Nor can anything which exists pertain to it. For the moment that it partook of anything which exists, it would partake of existence. Because the English words have the same root, I wanted to give you the Greek here to clarify that. He's saying that it cannot participate in ontos, which is being. Ontos is, for example, the root of the word ontology, the study of being or the realms of reality. So it cannot participate in any sort of being, which means it cannot participate in ousia. If it were to participate in ontos, it would participate in ousia, and since it doesn't participate in ousia, it must not participate in ontos, which means it doesn't participate in any of the absolute realities, in any of the categories that were brought up in the first and second hypotheses. So there's neither greatness nor smallness nor equality that pertains to it, nor likeness nor difference, either in relation to itself or to other things. And then he asks, can other things pertain to it if nothing pertains to it? Okay, so this is a one that completely does not exist in any way. Nothing pertains to it at all. So then other things are neither like it nor unlike it, nor the same nor different. How can they be if it doesn't exist? And so now here is the climax, really, of the seventh hypothesis. Well then, will the notions of that, or to that, or some, or this, or of another, or to another, or past, future, present, or knowledge, or opinion, or perception, or definition, or name, or anything else which exists pertain to the non-existent. So he's denying all of this then of the seventh hypothesis 1. The sixth hypothesis 1, we could talk about it even though it is not. We know that by saying that it is not, we have some knowledge of what we're talking about, and it's different from other things that are not. That was discussed in my last video. So those notions, that or to that or some and so on, all of that was the language of the sixth hypothesis, talking about past, future, or present, so time. The seventh hypothesis 1 is not in time. And also there's no knowledge of it. So whereas the third hypothesis 1, there was knowledge of it, there is opinion or perception, it's coming into and out of being, of ousia, coming into being and perishing. This seventh hypothesis 1, we're denying all of that. So the state of mind that we have here is like what you might call existentialism. The idea that we can't have any knowledge of what is beyond, that there is nothing, in fact. This is a kind of, I'm going to say atheism, but there's kind of a feeling of agnosticism here, that we just don't even know anything about what is beyond. We can say nothing at all. This has some parallels to the fifth hypothesis, which is that division, that the one that is in our physical world are completely divided with no interaction. However, the fifth hypothesis was dealing with the one that is, and so it creates a kind of dualism of the divine and the mundane. And it also can be kind of the basis of spiritual systems that talk of a good and evil that are both have absolute reality. So it is a bit different, even though there are some similarities between the seventh and the fifth. They're not the same. The seventh hypothesis 1 is not, and so there's nothing that pertains to it, nothing we can say about it. So then, just to wrap it up, Parmenides puts this bow on it, if you will. Then the non-existent one has no state or condition whatsoever. And Aristoteles gives a very confident maybe by saying it appears to have none whatsoever. So that is the seventh hypothesis. I'd very much like to know what you think of this existentialist view. And so please leave your comments below. Any questions you might have also, feel free to leave those below. Or there's always an email address at the bottom of the description box. And as always, if you like what you're seeing, I would appreciate you taking just a moment to hit the like button. And also please subscribe if you don't already. And my next video then will be on the eighth hypothesis, and I do hope you'll join me for that. Thank you.